It's just kind of become something of a regular occurrence if you are someone who is a Michigan fan at this point, and that is that Michigan's going to beat Ohio State. It's not fully relegated, just strictly to the gridiron because Michigan went into Columbus for the only meeting between the two rivals and emerged with a 3-point win, just like football. Let's talk briefly about that. We'll move into some football things, and we'll do so here. I can't talk. Right here on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday. We are back and doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. I am your man. I'm trying to do 18 things at once. I'm your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. I suddenly had an idea, and I'm like, I need to do this right now. And I ended up just kind of screwing myself in the open. Got to be a better way to say that. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about Michigan basketball, which we have not done that much. I have not been able to see as many games as I would have liked, but this is your first place Michigan basketball team in terms of the Big Ten rankings. They've got a full game on Michigan State, who they will play on Friday night at Chrysler Center, one of two, but they come off of beating rival Ohio State 86-83. Huge win for Michigan to move up to number 12 in both the AP and the coaches poll. But it's always particularly sweet when you get to take down a rival, of course. So really, really amazing thing because it's typical ebbs and flows. And one of the things that I really like to see from Michigan basketball is that many of the games that they've had lately, remember, they lost their early games that they've lost. They've lost 5 games so far this year. If memory serves, all 5 are by single digits, pretty close to being a one-score type of game. With 4 of the 5, because the Purdue game on the road at Purdue was a blowout situation. But outside of that, Michigan basketball has been in the thick of it all. And you kind of expected that if the game was close late, Michigan was going to lose. Not the case lately, and not the case in Columbus. So huge for Michigan to emerge with a victory. Everyone's laughing at my friend Dave Biddle because he put out a tweet back in when Jake Diebler was hired for Ohio State that was the right choice. While Dusty May, don't forget Dusty May. He's really only known because he had one good tournament run. Well, that's not really true either, but whatever you want to believe. Led by Dan Wolf. We'll go with the Steve Lorenz, Dan Wolf of it all. Vlad Golden with 20 points. And Roddy Gale had 9. Not a huge impressive thing in his return to Columbus, but nonetheless, some clutch play down the stretch. And he endured all of the boos and said that this was his favorite basketball game he's played in, right? So pretty amazing that they were able to get those things kind of all ironed out. They were able to survive despite the late attempt to tie the game that with an open look. And down goes Ohio State, just the same as in football. So Ohio State fans, you should just be happy because your basketball team is going to win a national championship now. That's not true. That's not going to happen. Nonetheless, huge for Michigan, right? For the sake of being able to continue to put the foot on the rival's throat. Now, Ohio State basketball is not in the same category as that of Ohio State football by any stretch, right? This is not a team that is just perennially dominant in the same way. Like, they've had multiple long stretches. Obviously, that's why they've got a first-year head coach. Things didn't work out with, what's his face? The dude that he looks more like a football coach. I can't remember his name all of a sudden. That's where we're at. But the last Ohio State basketball coach, who was like pretty good, but like not like exemplary. And this just puts Michigan in like a wonderful position in terms of being able to just continue to do what it needs to do in order to secure itself as high of a ranking as possible. 2 teams so far beat that are current top 25 teams. And that's Purdue and who's the other one? I can't remember. Oh, Wisconsin, who's ranked ahead of Michigan, actually. That win is continuing to look better and better. But 6 regular season games left. Michigan State at Nebraska, Rutgers, Illinois, Maryland, and then at Michigan State. It's kind of a tough stretch. I mean, Nebraska is certainly winnable. Rutgers is certainly winnable. They've already beaten Rutgers by 3 points not too long ago here. Illinois is going to always be tough, right? Like, it's been a long time that Michigan's beaten Illinois, if memory serves. My memory fails me, so don't hold me to that. Maryland, a ranked team, always tough as well. So, and then Michigan State at the Breslin to close out the regular season. So we're getting there. It's amazing that there's so little left. And I've only gone to 2 games all year. Disappointing on my end. I've had a lot that I've been dealing with. So they need to stop having games on Sundays. That's what precludes me from going to a lot of games, Sundays. But again, just massive to be able to beat the Buckeyes, continue to be able to laugh at the other fan base. Please do it in a charitable, hospitable fashion. I like to urge good sportsmanship, even if that other side does not like to reciprocate that feeling. But nonetheless, to continue to take these games in the 2 major sports is just huge. Ohio State, only reprieve it can get is in either the Big Ten tournament or if it has the ability to make the March Madness tournament, which does not look likely at this stage for Ohio State. That's really it. And even the Big Ten tournament is not necessarily a given if they continue to falter down the stretch. But huge for Michigan to go down into Columbus to get that gritty win, to see Vlad Golden bounce back after a not so good game against Purdue, and to just to continue to see this team ascend. And it is really amazing what Dusty May has done. And so we're giving them top billing for 1 episode here. We'll probably not do so for a while because we like to talk about football on this program. This episode is also included in that, and we are going to move over to football because I don't have any really amazing basketball insights. Let's just be honest about it. But I still need to give lip service to the fact that they beat Ohio State and moved up in the rankings. And now comes crunch time. Close out, win that Big Ten tournament, or not tournament, but Big Ten regular season. It's certainly doable. It starts on Friday against Michigan State. Win that game. Michigan, I feel like, usually plays pretty well against Michigan State at home. It's on the road is where it gets a little dicey, right? The teams tend to do really well with home field advantage. And the fact that Dusty May recognized, hey, this is the big rivalry. I turned the page way faster than I should have, given we just beat one rival, but we're going right into the next rival. So the guard play is going to be really interesting to see for Michigan State. How does that combine against Michigan and its want to go big? We'll look forward to that on Friday. So we're going to continue on. We're going to talk about football because On3 noted one interesting thing. I know a lot of you are not particularly pleased with Michigan's transfer portal haul, yet Michigan is one of 5 teams in all of college football that can say this. We're going to get to that here in just a moment. But before we do, when the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth-quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting features because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch 3, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, Tuesday's show is going to be a little late because I officially, finally, assuming it all goes to plan here, filming the first episode of Faith Over Culture podcast with Pastor Robbie Emery. I will be heading down to Ann Arbor to do that show. The plan is to do a night show here and also have just give you maybe a little sneak preview tomorrow of what that looks like. Just probably relatively poorly edited into this show. But we'll do it. We'll do what we can. Just to give you a little preview of that, because obviously it is Michigan football related on top of faith based in Jesus Christ. And I'm always excited, as you can tell if you're watching by the hat and the shirt. I love Jesus Christ. and much to the chagrin of people who don't want to open their eyes to that. Anyway, so On3 put out an article today noting, and this is something that we could have looked at any point, and I never really did because I'm not really perusing every ranking everywhere all the time. But Michigan is one of 5 teams that has a top 10 ranking in both recruiting, the recruiting class in 2025, as well as the transfer portal. What do you say? The transfer portal, a top 10 ranking in the transfer portal. I was told that Michigan did not have a great transfer portal class. Well, not according to On3, who has Michigan at number 10 overall with 13 transfer portal commitments, 3 4-stars and 10 3-stars. So keep in mind, though, that you look at some of the 4-stars and everything that are listed here, and I'd have to see. Can I look at it this way? Those are the out. Let's see. Transfers in. That's what I want to see. So as far as the 4-stars are concerned, Justice Haynes is one of the 4-stars. Remember, he was a 5-star according to 24/7 Sports as a recruit. And then same thing with David Payne, who's a 3-star in the transfer portal, but was a 5-star as a recruit. Brady Norton's actually one of the 3 4-stars. TJ Metcalf is the other one. But then you just kind of look at some of these guys. Donovan McCulley was a 4-star. Some of them, it's like they ranked. You take it where you can get it, right? Like, because you got some guys that are 5-stars as recruits, maybe didn't pan out, or Justice Haynes just didn't really get that opportunity. Or you look at a guy like TJ Metcalf, who really showed out for Arkansas last year, but was a 3-star recruit coming out of high school. Donovan McCulley was a 4-star coming out of high school as a quarterback going to Indiana, and now is a 3-star wide receiver. But it's just interesting to me to kind of see some of these rankings here as far as the transfers in. But nonetheless, just with the 13, Michigan's ranked number 10. They're in good company along with Auburn, Texas A&M, LSU, and Oregon as the other ones that have excelled at both the transfer portal as well as the recruiting class. So what that tells me is that Michigan is just in an absolute solid spot in terms of trying to have a mixture of continuation, right? Like that's what the transfer portal mostly is for. Brady Norton, one of the 4-stars that was listed here, according to 24/7 Sports, I wouldn't expect him to necessarily play in year 1 for Michigan, right? Like he's going to be, I think, a little bit more of a developmental prospect. But that you mix having guys that can come in like Mikey Keene, that is going to, I'm not going to say he is going to start at quarterback for Michigan to start the year, but certainly would have a little bit of an inside track due to experience, but then he'll be battling it out with the recruit, number 1 overall player in the country, regardless of position, in Bryce Underwood. So it's nice to see that. Now, obviously, you want to continue to add to the class with other people that they've been trying to look at. Like, again, I'm looking at wide receiver, and I'm wondering what is Michigan able to find in terms of more talent to kind of help out, because we've gone through the wide receiver list, and even though it's like, well, a guy like Fred Moore or a guy like Amarian Walker, if they take a big step forward, then you can look at that and say like, okay, now they're in a good position. But because we haven't seen it, it's hard to really kind of feel that. Now, the question is, how much does Michigan want to go for like the ringers versus like trusting their own development with 2 players like that compared to being able to find another guy? Or, you also look at a guy like Anthony Simpson, who comes from UMass. I feel like that isn't talked about enough, right? Because like he had 700 some yards or around 700 yards 2 years ago before only playing 2 games last year, right? So a lot of people don't really look at a guy like him. He's at UMass. Okay, he's not necessarily that great, they think. But then you also think about like Chip Lindsey had, what's his name, who was at Oregon when he was at Troy, their main receiver. I can't remember his name. Stewart? I really wish my memory was better. You know who I'm talking about, nonetheless. And he ended up being the number 1 receiver for Oregon this last year, and he originally got his start at Troy. So don't overlook a guy who is able to be successful at the lower level and able to come up to the big time. Now, we haven't really seen a lot of that work out for Michigan at wide receiver. You look at CJ Charleston and you say like, well, he was pretty successful at Youngstown State, and he had 1 catch for 22 yards this past year for Michigan. Where was it? Like he had pretty good blocking, except for the one that got him the penalty. So you hope that they're able to figure something out in terms of there, or if they're continuing to look along the offensive line for another offensive tackle, if they really feel like they need a cornerback. But at the same time, it does feel like Michigan is in a generally very good spot and a mixture of having that top talent. Because you look and say, there's multiple players who are on this team that could play right away. And then I ask the question there, it's like, well, who are those players? Who are those freshmen? Well, you know what? Let's actually get to that here in just a moment. Which Michigan freshmen are more likely than not to have early playing time? I'm going to go through the entire list, and I'm going of all of the signees, all of 24 of them, and I'm going to give you either like definitely will play, could play, you know, and maybe like a rotational thing, right? Like we're doing this off the cuff a little bit here, but and then who's almost certainly going to redshirt. So I'll give you a little bit of a designation there. Normally when we do this, I've already written the article, and I haven't done that this time around. So we're going to kind of give you my off the cuff thoughts, which I prefer to do generally when I can, because that way you're getting kind of my my thought process live. So let's go to, obviously, let's start at the top of the list. Bryce Underwood is absolutely going to play. Will he be a starter? That's unclear at this point, but he will absolutely play, and I would guarantee that he will start at least one game, if not 11 this year, right? Like he's that type of talent. We know that. We've talked about Bryce a ton. We will continue to talk about Bryce as much as possible, probably, because that's the exciting name above all other names. Andrew Babalola, this is why I wanted to differentiate between rotational and could play, because I don't think he will be a rotational player, but he could play. And I know some people that would look at Andrew Babalola, and I'll just throw Ty Haywood in here at the moment too, and say that they have shots. And I do think that they have shots to get in, right? Like Andrew Babalola is listed at 6'5.5" and 295. Ty Haywood 6'5" and 297. So they already have the requisite size. It's funny when you see Andrew Babalola is actually 295 because he looks so thin in person, right? He doesn't look like he's that big. And I think of the two, you have a better chance of seeing Andrew Babalola being the guy because he's going to be around all spring. It's not just because he's ranked higher. He just has a higher opportunity to be able to see the field because he'll have all of this time on task. Nate Marshall, edge rusher, 6'4", 245, the guy who flipped from Michigan to Auburn and back. He's number 40 overall by On3, 5-star on Rivals. I think he's absolutely going to play in year one, but as a rotational player. I would be surprised if we don't see Nate Marshall, especially because we don't have a lot of big names to talk about at edge rusher right now in terms of like star power. Derek Moore is easily the biggest star in terms of that. TJ Guy was not a star, but certainly, like I've said, he has that Chase Winovich ability to kind of climb the ladder there. But you look at like a Cam Brandt or Dom Nichols or Devin Baxter, like these, these are 4-star type guys, but not with like the cachet. No one was like, oh man, just wait until that guy's ready to go. Michigan is, but fans really aren't. So there's that. Kanawha Winston, an On3 analyst had noted that if he was taller, he would be like an instant impact player, but he's 5'11", 184. Safety's a bit loaded, but I wouldn't be surprised to see if he kind of does get in there. I could see him being a nickel kind of right away. It'll be interesting to see where they're able to put him in there. Elijah Dotson, who could play safety, could play cornerback. He's listed on 3 as a cornerback. Don't be surprised if he gets involved, although I don't believe he early enrolled. So that's going to kind of pamper him a little bit. But certainly I know that there's been talk about him playing early. But so those are two guys that are maybe rotational. Shamari Earls, I think, is definitely rotational. I think we'll definitely see Shamari Earls at corner at some point. Obviously coming off of an injury, but the early enrollee aspect, getting in strength training and all that stuff early is going to really help him. They've talked to him about being that Will Johnson style guy. That's how Michigan sees him. So I would not be surprised if we see a heavy dose of Shamari Earl, more so in the back end of the season. Jordan Young, I feel like that's a red shirt. Certainly could get involved. Again, safety's a bit of it's kind of a very deep position group. So at some point, I kind of have to cut it off. Unfortunately, I will say that with Jordan Young, but I wouldn't be surprised if suddenly we hear that he's really come on strong. and but yeah, again, a late summer arrival that kind of precludes him from being an early guy. Andrew Marsh, I think we will. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he's a starter at right away as a true freshman. Right, he's got it. No matter what Rivals, or is it Rivals or is it On3? I'm looking at the On3 industry ranking. One of them dropped him to a 3-star. I think it's On3 proprietary. I mean, he was a borderline 5-star type of guy. I see him as that, having watched him. Like, he's just got that it factor. He is going to be at least in heavy rotation, if not a guy who starts right away. Jaden Sanders, cornerback from Texas, was super excited. It's actually funny. That's the last video I posted to my personal TikTok before I started the Faith Over Culture TikTok. It was a Jaden Sanders video, I think. Maybe it wasn't the last one, but it's the one that just keeps on getting replayed as I talked about what he brings to the table. I think he's going to be one of those guys that you'll see him next year. Maybe you'll see him come in some spots, kind of like Josiah Edmond, but I think he's more of a next year type of guy. Would not be surprised and actually would peg him from a red shirt. We don't talk enough about Jacob Washington, who I think absolutely could be a guy who you end up seeing a lot of year one. Some ranking services have him as the top wide receiver on in the class for Michigan. He's 6'3", 180, so he's got the size Michigan needs. He's certainly skillful. If you watch any of the film, he kind of has that it factor that Michigan's desperately needing. Climbed up the rankings once he committed to Michigan. More eyes got on him, and people looked at it and said, oh, yes, please, thank you. I would like some more of that. So I would not be surprised if he was in heavy rotation. This is the one year that I'm saying freshmen can absolutely crack the rotation. Usually when it comes to wide receivers, I'd say no. And even though Sharon Moore said the further away you are from the ball, the earlier you have a chance to play, I have not found that to be the case for Michigan too much in terms of at least utilization. I think that Jacob Washington and Jamar Browder, who I'll mention now instead of when we get to him, I think both of them have the opportunity to play early. Will they start? No, I don't think they'll start, but could be in heavy rotation. Linebacker Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng, as long as he is healthy, right? He was injured during bowl prep. At least it looked that way. He was in street clothes. I firmly believe he will be in rotation in year one. Benny Patterson, defensive tackle, though listed as an edge by On3. I think that he is a redshirt candidate. Running back Jasper Parker. I think that he is going to see some time, but because of the depth ahead of him, like I could see him having kind of a Chris Evans year one type of role, right? Where he kind of comes in, like they're Michigan's rolling in a game, and then they're just like, okay, let's throw in Jasper Parker and see what he can do. Or like CJ Stokes early on in the first couple games of his career, 2022, where it was like, okay, yeah, he might still redshirt, but I think you'll see a little Jasper Parker. I think he is the type of kid that is just going to be a fan favorite once everything is said and done. Travis Moten, defensive lineman. I absolutely think, even though he was a 3-star at one point, On3 now has him as a 4-star in both the rank, their proprietary as well as the industry ranking. Listen, he's got that Mason Graham to him in a lot of ways. Like, to me, like, he's a little bit of like the tweener between Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant. I'm not saying he's going to be as good as either of those, but he's got the size, not quite as big as Kenneth Grant was, but he's got the size essentially of Kenneth Grant as far as the height and not quite there as far as weight, but he's an early enrollee, so he's got that opportunity. And he's got the wrestling background that Mason Graham had. I think you're going to see him in year one. I don't know that it's going to be a lot, but that was kind of the same for Mason Graham, right? You didn't see Mason Graham a ton in his freshman year, but you did see him. Avery Gash, early enrollee, interior offensive lineman, is a redshirt in my opinion. Julius Holly, edge rusher, also a redshirt in my opinion. Same thing with Donovan Johnson, Bobby Kanka. We talked about Jamar Browder. Caden Strayhorn is probably 2 years out. Eli Owens, tight end, protege of Max Bredesen, is the plan there. I think you'll absolutely see him in year one because he's going to be just, he's probably behind Max Bredesen and Jalen Hoffman, but I think that you'll see him get into some games. And then the last two are Chase Taylor and Chase Herbstreit, who both, I would be surprised if you see either of them. Would not be surprised to see Chase Taylor in some special teams, but would be surprised if we see him at linebacker. Now, this is the thing. Some of these guys could be special teamers. You see that all the time. I can tell you that Cole Sullivan played in every game this last year, and you'd be like, well, I don't remember seeing him, but it's because he was in special teams. So you mix those guys with the transfers who you'll see probably out of the 13 that I just mentioned, you'll probably see 8 of them regularly. I think that they're just in a really good spot with having multiple guys that can contribute right away as freshmen as well as transfers. So it'll be exciting to see that. Anyway, all right, that's going to do it for us today. Like I said, we'll be late on Tuesday. We'll see if we have news to talk about or if we end up going back to our winter outlook series and talking about either the linebackers or the defensive backs. And we'll go from there, but hopefully we'll be able to get you a little preview of the Faith Over Culture podcast, some of the interesting Michigan football-centric stuff that Robbie Emery had to talk about in my interview with him tomorrow. So stay tuned to that. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We'll talk to you again on Tuesday evening. Peace.